I knew the bastard was going to do something stupid the second he stopped calling me by my name and started with young lady, I'm 43, Kurt, not your damn intern. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened Tuesday morning at 10:14 a.m. He didn't knock, he didn't even blink. He just kicked open my office door like a low-budget cowboy and screamed, "Clear your desk." I didn't flinch. Not because I'm brave, because I was processing. This wasn't just a tantrum, it was a power play in front of my entire Treasury Ops team, people I'd trained, led, vouched for. He pointed at me like I was a ketchup packet past its expiration date. "Security's on their way," he added, like some low-rent Bond villain with a QuickBooks fetish. I looked around at the team. No one said a word. One guy nervously closed his Google Sheet like that was going to save him. Another pretended he suddenly needed to sneeze. And me? I stood up, took a slow breath, and reached under my desk drawer. I didn't grab my family photo or the cactus I've kept alive longer than my last relationship. I grabbed the binder. A black, boring, three-ring slab labeled in block Sharpie. MSA executed copy. That binder weighed about 2 pounds, but in that moment, it felt like a sword. I tucked it under my arm like a lady heading into church with her best casserole recipe. I walked right past Kurt, who had the audacity to smirk like he'd just dropped a mic. He didn't realize he'd just pulled the pin on a grenade and handed it to himself. And folks, while I've got you, if you're still here listening, and you're part of that 90% who haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and tap that button and hit the like. Seriously, it helps our little team of gremlins behind the scenes keep turning this corporate chaos into caffeine-fueled revenge bedtime stories. Okay, thanks. Now back to the implosion. Security finally showed up, two guys who looked like they were late for lunch. They were awkward, like do we cuff her or just guide her? Awkward. I walked out calmly, binder in hand, as if I were heading to a staff meeting instead of being publicly executed. My badge was disabled before I even reached the parking lot. Classic. I sat in my car for a minute, binder in my lap, looking at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was flushed, my eyes glassy. But behind the mortification, there was something else, something delicious and quiet, because Kurt didn't know what he just walked into. See, I wasn't just some cog in his new little kingdom. I wasn't optional. I wasn't replaceable. I was the infrastructure. I had personally negotiated our master service agreement with our payment processor. That binder in my lap, it had my initials on every page, notarized signatures, timelines, and most importantly, Appendix B. Appendix B isn't just legal toilet paper. It's the official list of named officers authorized to guarantee payment services with our primary processor. Only 3 people were listed. The CEO, our old COO who's now in Singapore, retired, fishing, unreachable, and me. Which means Kurt, the swaggering new CFO with hair gel you could see from space, he wasn't even on the list. He could shout, scream, and swing his little Excel sword all day long. But legally, he couldn't authorize jack, not a dime, not a cent, not a click. By 10:43 a.m., I was logged into my personal email, drafting a short, polite note to an old friend over at the payment processor. I attached a scanned copy of the signed, countersigned, and sealed MSA. Subject line, urgent clarification on officer authorization. No threats, no drama. Just a single question. Please confirm whether recent infrastructure changes comply with the agreement as executed. Then I closed my laptop, poured myself a cup of tea, and sat on my porch. The fall air tasted like revenge. I didn't have to wait long. By Wednesday morning, my group chat with former coworkers was lighting up like a meth lab Christmas tree. "Hey, did you see the client ticket from Zurich? Payments are bouncing. Did we change gateway tokens without Ruth?" Every message was just more fuel on the bonfire Kurt lit with his ego and a Bic lighter. By noon, 3 major clients had emailed support with the kind of phrases that make your stomach twist. Irregular transactions, duplicate charges, service breach. The kind of phrases that, if you're in Treasury Ops, mean one thing: somebody messed with the wiring. I refreshed our company's public status page. Sure enough, under payment services, a sleek little yellow dot was blinking. Partial outage. Translation? Kurt had gone in, poked around like a drunk raccoon in a server closet, and now the company's cash flow artery was clogged with his strategic improvements. I took a bite of my sad little microwave quesadilla and watched the chaos unfold from the safety of my living room. My inbox, though deactivated, was still forwarding certain flagged terms to my private email, because redundancy is a woman's best friend in tech. I had set up the filters years ago when I first negotiated the MSA. Phrases like token mismatch, ACH rejection, and Appendix B violation were all still firing. By 2:07 p.m., I got one flagged forward from legal. Need clarification on officer authorization for recent gateway changes. Can we confirm signatory authority? Oh, honey, you're asking that now? Meanwhile, over in the IT Slack channels, which, let's just say, I still had a ghost tab open for, one of the engineers posted a screenshot of the error logs. Line after line of unauthorized modification detected from the payment processor's compliance gateway. And the best part? Each one referenced missing signature, authorized officer. Every time Kurt's changes tried to validate, the system basically said, "Who TF is this?" But Kurt, oh no, he wasn't sweating yet. No, he was busy hosting a damn town hall on Zoom. I watched it from my phone, propped up on the kitchen counter while I unloaded the dishwasher. He stood there in a tight shirt, trying to look like the wolf of some Midwestern Wall Street, saying things like, "We've streamlined backend controls and payments are evolving. Some glitches are natural." Glitches, Kurt, is that what we're calling your incompetence now? Growing pains? That's what you say when a toddler learns to walk, not when you faceplant a $12M payment pipeline into regulatory purgatory. And the board? Oh, they were eating it up. For now. He had graphs, pie charts, a fancy slide that said frictionless financial future in Comic Sans, or something equally criminal. Not a single word about compliance. Not a breath about the fact that their entire system was operating without legal authorization. Because, fun fact, if the processor isn't bound to the changes, none of it counts. It's like giving CPR instructions to a mannequin. The entire infrastructure was skating on legal thin ice. No one seemed to hear the cracks, except me. I didn't just hear them, I could feel them, because I was that ice. My name was on every frozen layer, and Kurt had decided to start stomping in steel-toed boots. I opened the binder again. Page 14, subsection 3, all substantive changes to payment architecture must be approved by a named officer listed in Appendix B. Any attempt to circumvent this structure renders the changes null and void in accordance with Section 7(b) and subjects the client to breach review. I underlined the word void twice. That clause wasn't fluff. It wasn't the stuff people skip over. It was a kill switch. And Kurt had just thrown it with the arrogance of a man who doesn't read fine print unless it's on a cocktail napkin. But still, I waited. Not because I'm passive, because timing is everything. You don't call the fire department the second you smell smoke. You let the bastard light the whole couch on fire so there's no doubt who struck the match. And from what I was seeing, Kurt was already holding the empty gas can. By Thursday morning, the cracks had turned into canyons. The client escalations weren't just embarrassing now, they were existential. One of our biggest international partners, the kind that pays quarterly in 8 figures, had flagged their entire payout stream. Their legal department was evaluating continuity of service, which is corporate speak for, "If you don't fix this in 24 hours, we're lawyering up." Kurt, meanwhile, had gone radio silent. Not because he was working hard, no, his ego was busy building a wall to keep reality out. I saw an internal newsletter he'd greenlit where he congratulated himself for modernizing legacy structures. The irony. He'd modernized us straight into noncompliance. I sipped my coffee, cracked open the binder again, and stared at Appendix B like it was an old friend I hadn't visited in a while. 3 names, 3 signatures. Mine was second. Dated, sealed, and notarized by a woman named Deborah who still sends me Christmas cards. I pulled out my phone and scrolled until I found the number I hadn't used in 2 years. Nina T., VP Client Compliance. Mavelix Processing. We weren't close, but we'd been through fire together. Nina's the kind of woman who wears matte lipstick like armor and calls bullshit in 3 languages. She picked up on the second ring. "Michelle, hi Nina, got a minute? Is this about valence?" My stomach did a small pirouette. "Why do you ask?" she exhaled. "Because your new CFO, Kurt, right? Has triggered 2 compliance alerts and a service queue audit in under 48 hours. That usually only happens when there's fraud or somebody uses the word synergy too many times." I couldn't help the smirk. "He made some configuration changes. Did those come through?" "Oh, they came through," she said, dragging the words like a tired mechanic explaining how you've ruined your engine with grape soda, "but they bounced. No valid signature. Appendix B validation failed. Who tried to sign them?" Silence. Then, "Kurt D. Weller, I didn't laugh, I didn't cheer. I just said he's not on Appendix B. Never has been." "Exactly," Nina snapped. "And per Section 7, that means we can't legally honor those modifications. We've paused 3 transaction batches and issued internal breach notifications. Legal's prepping for board escalation. Do you need my copy of the MSA, please? I know you keep yours cleaner than our archives. I'll scan it, notarized original, tabs and all." Michelle, her voice softened, just for breath. "You doing okay?" There it was, a moment of human kindness. I swallowed it down like whiskey, burning but grounding. "Better than I was on Tuesday," I said, "and not nearly as panicked as your inbox is about to be." She let out one of those war-weary laughs only people in compliance understand. "Send it to my direct line. We'll move fast." I hung up, slid the document from its sleeve, and opened my home scanner. As the light moved back and forth, casting shadows across each page, I felt something shift in my chest. Not pride, not vindication, just readiness. This wasn't about revenge, not exactly. It was about precision. About the kind of clean, surgical justice you don't see on office motivational posters. No inspirational quotes, no hugs, just a paper trail so sharp it could shave the smug off a CFO's face. As the last page fed through, I drafted the email. Subject: Executed MSA Appendix B validation to Nina T. CC. Mavelix Compliance Office Attachment. MSA executed Valence Systems payment auth PDF. Hi Nina, as discussed, please find attached the fully executed master service agreement between Valence Systems and Mavelix Processing, including notarized Appendix B. Let me know if any further clarification is needed. Best, Michelle A. Lang, former director, Treasury Operations Valence Systems. I stared at the send button for a moment. Funny thing about moments like this, there's no fanfare, no lightning crack, just the quiet knowing that you're handing someone the rope they've been weaving into their own noose. I clicked send. Then I sat back, closed the binder, and whispered to no one in particular. Let the paper do the talking. Kurt was still playing king of the sandbox, swinging his little plastic shovel like it meant something. By Friday, the company newsletter hit inboxes with a glowing update titled Modernizing Momentum, CFO Weller's Vision for Frictionless Finance. It read like a love letter he'd written to himself during a protein bar high. Phrases like accelerated onboarding and digital vendor alignment were thrown around like confetti at a sad parade. And there he was, photo and all, arms crossed, standing in front of a whiteboard that probably hadn't been written on since the Bush administration. My name? Scrubbed, like I never existed. They'd already archived my company email, forwarded it to a shared inbox called Finance Ops Overflow, which sounded like a sewer pipe for neglected problems. I couldn't access any of the internal portals anymore, not even the outdated Confluence pages I built by hand over 6 caffeine-fueled weekends. My work ID badge? Deactivated, obviously. They even took me off the Slack workspace, which would have hurt more if I didn't still have ghost access through the marketing sandbox they forgot I built last year. Every day Kurt pretended the fire was fine, he kept throwing gasoline on it. The first spark came from an internal memo I wasn't supposed to see, but did, because an engineer accidentally forwarded it to my personal Gmail, forgetting I'd been removed. It was from the head of internal audit. Subject: Urgent Payment System Anomalies Escalation Path required. It listed 7 inconsistencies flagged in outbound vendor payments. Multiple duplicate transactions, one routed through a deprecated sub-account. Another routed back to the client, which, in case you're not fluent in finance, is the corporate version of oops, we paid the pizza guy twice and tipped him our rent. And guess what phrase kept popping up in bold? No authorized signature validation present. Kurt, of course, had answers, always. In Friday's leadership sync, he spun the audit flags as integration friction and told the board he was personally overseeing remediation. The man could have been selling tornadoes to trailer parks. He even dared to say, under my leadership, we've slashed vendor onboarding time by 60%. Yeah, Kurt, because you skipped the security protocols, the compliance chain, and oh yeah, the law. It was like watching someone duct tape a parachute after they've already jumped. Meanwhile, I sat at my kitchen table, cross-referencing the audit flags with the exact clauses he violated. I had Section 4A, 7B, and 9D of the MSA open side by side with the red line changes he'd made to the vendor profile schema. He had overridden the API key structure I implemented, the very thing that linked approved signatory validation with token authorization. Translation: he'd unplugged the brakes from a moving vehicle because he thought the horn was enough to stop it. The processor systems had been rejecting the payment instructions silently, letting them stall in pre-clearance, like jets grounded in fog. And since only I had the override credentials for that particular structure, and only my name matched the one in Appendix B, there was no legal way to move the money. But the most poetic part? Legal had started sniffing around. Internal audit had copied them quietly on 2 escalation threads by Friday afternoon. A compliance liaison, who used to ignore me like I was a living FAQ, had suddenly reached out to Kurt's chief of staff with clarification requests about signatory authority. And yet, Kurt strutted on. He presented another improvements update in that week's board report, this time claiming quarterly savings driven by contract restructuring. What he failed to mention was that half those vendors had already paused their own services due to late payments, and 2 were threatening penalty clauses for breach of processing terms. The more he bragged, the deeper the grave got, and he didn't even bring a flashlight. At one point, someone from HR, bless her beige heart, emailed me a transition document asking if I'd be willing to consult for a few hours to explain how the ledger cleandown worked during processor sync. I almost choked on my tea. Consult? You want me to consult on the thing I built, after you let Mr. Chesthair swing in and declare me obsolete? No, sweetheart. I didn't respond. I just dragged the email into a folder labeled Future Litigation and took a walk around the block. The sun was out. The air had that sharpness that comes right before everything breaks. It smelled like asphalt injustice. Back inside, I checked the processor's portal again. Still frozen. 3 transaction queues in active quarantine, all because one man wanted to feel bigger than the paper he never read. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to storm into a meeting or call anyone names. I had something better: time, and the contract, and a front row seat to the collapse. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was anxious, because I didn't want to miss it. The collapse wasn't coming with sirens. It was creeping in like fog, slow, quiet, inevitable. Kurt was still polishing his LinkedIn profile, probably adding infrastructure disruptor and fintech innovator to his list of sins. Meanwhile, the company's bloodstream, its payment flow, was freezing over one artery at a time. At 7:16 a.m., after my second cup of bitter black coffee and a slice of toast I didn't taste, I opened a blank email window. I stared at it for a full minute. Not because I didn't know what to say, because I knew exactly what I wanted this moment to feel like. Then I typed with the slow precision of someone laying down a fuse. Subject, executed MSA compliance confirmation to Michael D. Walsh CEO, Mavelix Processing CC, Nina T. Legal Ops at Mavelix GOM Attachment. MSA executed Valence Systems PDF. Hi Michael. As the former director of Treasury Operations at Valence Systems, I'm forwarding the fully executed copy of our master service agreement, including the notarized appendix B listing authorized officers. Please confirm whether the recent changes made by Valence's acting CFO comply with the execution terms and signatory validation. Best, Michelle A. Lang. No flourish, no dramatics, just the knife. I hit send, leaned back in my chair, and stared out the window. I watched a squirrel sprint across the fence like it owed someone money. My tea went cold, but inside me something was still. By 9:43 a.m., Nina responded, "Hi, Michelle, thank you for the document. This version aligns with the countersigned copy in our records. To confirm, the recent infrastructure modifications submitted by Mr. Kurt Weller lack the required signature of an authorized officer under Appendix B. These changes are not in compliance with our agreement and are currently under compliance review. We are pausing all non-guaranteed payment batches effective immediately and will be scheduling an urgent call with Valence leadership. Best, Nina T. VP Client Compliance Mavelix Processing." There it was. 4 sentences, but to anyone in the industry, it was a tactical nuke. All non-guaranteed payment batches paused. That's not just a pause. That's financial gridlock. That's vendors who don't get paid. Clients who can't pull invoices. Payroll systems hanging in limbo like wet laundry on a deadline. I didn't smile. I didn't exhale. I just reached for my binder, opened it back to Appendix B, and laid it flat on the table beside me like a relic of war. Then came the ripple. An hour later, one of my old analysts, God bless his chaos, texted me, "Yo, emergency call just added to board calendar." Title, Urgent Compliance Status Mavelix. I checked Valence's corporate portal. They'd pushed a system-wide service interruption update banner, blaming the processor for external review delays. Nice try, Kurt. Gaslighting the people whose job is literally recording every byte of transactional movement is a bold strategy. By 1:07 p.m., 3 executives had joined the compliance call calendar invite. One of them, the general counsel. Another, the chair of the audit committee. When you get all 3 in the same room before happy hour, someone's about to bleed. Kurt still hadn't made a peep publicly. I imagined him in his office, blinds drawn, necktie slightly loosened, telling himself he could spin this. That all he had to do was blame engineering, blame the vendor, maybe even blame me, the disgruntled former employee. Classic move. It might have worked if he hadn't bulldozed right through the paper trail I left like breadcrumbs in a compliance forest. At 2:31 p.m., I got one last ping from Nina. No preamble, just one line. Your documentation was accepted by our general counsel. See you on the call. I wasn't invited, of course. I was no longer with the company, but that didn't matter. My signature was, my initials were, my notarization stamp was. My name was still the one the contract listened to. And that contract, it was about to read itself out loud in a boardroom full of stunned executives. I closed my laptop, picked up the binder, and slid it back into its protective sleeve. Some people wage war with words. I prefer ink, paper, and the sound of a man realizing, too late, that authority isn't something you bark. It's something you sign. It started like a whisper. 1 bounce transaction. Then 2, then 12. By Monday morning, the financial arteries of Valence Systems were officially clotted. The processor's pause on non-guaranteed transactions wasn't just a speed bump, it was a wall. Clients who paid on net 7 terms were calling to ask why their wires weren't acknowledged. Vendors who billed bi-weekly were threatening to freeze services. A European subsidiary had its entire payroll batch rejected mid-processing. Someone posted a screenshot of a failed $2.8 million transaction in the finance Slack. Caption, "Should we be worried or just start drinking now?" I didn't need to reply. The answer was both. The panic started in accounting, those poor souls who just wanted to balance ledgers, not dodge grenades. Then it spread to legal, who was frantically rereading the MSA like it was cursed scripture. Finally, it hit the exec floor, where Kurt, our fearless leader with a 6-figure haircut and a discount understanding of infrastructure, was sweating through his pinstripe armor. He blamed engineering first, said they migrated the integration endpoint too aggressively. Translation, they did what I told them to do, but now I need someone to throw under the bus. Engineering clapped back fast, published a 2-paragraph technical memo, neutral in tone, surgical in its devastation, detailing how all changes were implemented per directive from the CFO's office. They included timestamps, email references, Slack receipts. Then Kurt pivoted. It's the processor's fault, he announced during the Monday morning sync. They've had issues before. We'll escalate. But the processor had receipts too, legal ones. Because by then, every bounce transaction had been logged, reviewed, and flagged as unauthorized initiation signature invalid. And under our master service agreement, that wasn't a bug, it was a breach. Someone from support leaked a message from a high-tier client. The subject line alone made me whistle. Escalation, service violation contractual review underway. That's code for our lawyers are now involved, and your blood pressure should be too. Meanwhile, my name started doing laps around internal email threads. Quietly, carefully. Someone forwarded me a screenshot from inside the legal folder structure. A newly created file named Lang Signatory Validation PDF. My heart didn't race. It slowed down, like a predator settling into the rhythm of the hunt. One particularly bold staffer, probably new and blissfully unaware of company politics, dropped this bomb in a thread. Wasn't Michelle Lang the designated officer for processor authorization? Do we know if she approved any of these changes? Silence. Then someone else, I thought she was let go. Then another, I thought she resigned. Then, wait, didn't she draft the original MSA? By mid-morning, Kurt was pacing the executive floor like a man who just found out the bomb squad is busy. He was still convinced he could bluff his way through, that all he needed was the right slide deck, a few buzzwords, and a sacrificial lamb. He scheduled a board-level debrief at 4 p.m., sent around a document titled Operational Enhancements Temporary Flow Disruption Plan. I got a copy, of course. One of my old team leads had quietly CC'd me using his personal email. Subject line, you'll love this. It's got graphs. I opened the deck. Kurt was still posturing, claiming streamlined architecture, vendor conflict resolution, and my personal favorite, innovative finance syncing. He'd even photoshopped a fake quote from an anonymous vendor praising his changes. It read like the kind of Amazon review your mom writes when she doesn't know it's public. But beneath the glitter, the numbers didn't lie. 27 failed transaction batches, 4 flagged clients, $11.2 million in frozen funds, all traced back to one root cause: unauthorized modifications submitted without valid signature authority. Appendix B might as well have been a guillotine. And I sat on my porch with a glass of boxed red, wrapped in a hoodie older than his career, watching the sun drop over my quiet little street while Valence systems spun in legal orbit. I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to post a blog, go on a podcast, or write a fiery farewell on LinkedIn. I just waited, patient, inevitable, because I knew what was coming next. The call, the one with the board, the CEO, the processor, and a document in the middle of the table with my name on it. Signed, sealed, notarized, unmistakable. Kurt still thought he could talk his way through. He had no idea that paper speaks louder than pride. The boardroom at Valence Systems was packed, too packed, like the Titanic's ballroom half an hour after the iceberg. Kurt stood at the head of the table, notes neatly stacked, hair sculpted within an inch of its life. He had that fake calmness people wear when they know the floor under them is starting to crack, but think if they talk fast enough, they can outrun gravity. Thank you all for joining, he began, voice smooth like a politician selling swamp land. Let me first address the elephant in the room, the recent disruptions to payment processing. He used his hands a lot, gestured toward a screen behind him filled with graphs that meant nothing. Every line was going up and to the right like it was fleeing the truth. Yes, there were setbacks, friction points, but I want to be clear, the strategic improvements I implemented were essential. We've trimmed unnecessary layers, we've unlocked speed, we've increased vendor flexibility. The hiccups were expected. Someone near the far end of the table scribbled something in the margin of their board packet. Another board member, older, former COO of some Fortune 500 dinosaur, just stared with the kind of dead-eyed expression that said, I've seen this exact story before, and it ended with security dragging someone's box of plants to the elevator. Kurt kept going. I take full responsibility for the aggressive optimization. Ah, so now it's aggressive optimization, not unauthorized breach. Got it. He was about to click to his next slide when the monitor at the front of the room lit up. Static flickered, then steadied. A new face appeared, calm, gray-haired, eyes like granite. Michael D. Walsh, CEO of Mavelix Processing. Every chair shifted an inch. Apologies for the interruption, Michael said, his voice so even it felt colder than a slap. But we were asked to weigh in. Kurt smiled, that corporate fake smile people use when they know a train is coming but still wave politely. Yes, Michael, thank you for joining. We appreciate your. Michael held up a single sheet of paper. One page, nothing else. The master service agreement, he said. Executed 3 years ago, still in effect, still binding. He didn't wave it, didn't throw it. Just held it like a priest offering communion. Then, slowly, calmly, he read aloud, services are guaranteed by the named officer on Appendix B. He paused. Silence fell like someone hit mute on the entire building. Michael looked directly into the camera, eyes locking with Kurt's like a sniper settling a sight. Then he asked, clear as glass, your name isn't on this list. Who are you? No yelling, no drama, just that question hanging in the room like a blade. Kurt blinked once, then again, his throat bobbed. Well, CI. Things have evolved since the agreement was signed. I represent the office of the CFO now and assumed you assumed Michael cut in, voice still flat. But you didn't validate, you didn't authorize, you didn't sign, you're not on Appendix B. Therefore, every modification you made is void, per Clause 7B. A sound spread through the room, not a gasp, something worse, paper flipping. Board members, who had been half listening minutes earlier, were now turning to the back of their binders, flipping through pages like jurors in a murder trial, realizing the defendant just confessed. Appendix B, there it was, black and white, 3 names: Michelle A. Lang, Calvin D. Miller, Susan Y. Ortega, no Kurt Weller, no acting, no interim, no wiggle room. Kurt's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He glanced at the general counsel, who was already inching his chair slightly away from him like they weren't even on the same Zoom call anymore. Michael folded the paper once, set it down, and said simply, "We issued a freeze on all non-validated transactions. Until compliance confirms the breach status, your systems will remain throttled, per agreement." Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "We'll also be conducting a signatory audit for the last 30 days. Translation: We're about to drag every receipt." The screen went black. Michael was gone, but the silence he left behind was louder than anything. Kurt looked around. No one met his eye, not the VP of Finance, not the head of legal, not even the junior analyst sitting in the corner who once tweeted that Kurt looked like Elon Musk if he drank tap water. Someone coughed. Another slowly turned their binder to the front again. Kurt opened his mouth one more time, maybe to deny, maybe to spin, maybe to beg. But the moment had passed. The paper had spoken. There's a moment in every downfall where the accused stops talking to defend themselves and starts talking to survive. That moment came exactly 4 minutes after Michael Walsh signed off. Silence lingered like a corpse in the room, but then the emails started pinging, one after another. Red, bold, marked urgent. The kind of emails that make executive assistants pause mid-keystroke and whisper, "Oh no?" First, from the payment processor's legal division. Subject: formal breach notification, unauthorized modifications, all changes executed under Mr. Kurt Weller's direction between August 3rd and August 27th have been deemed null, non-binding, and in technical breach of the standing MSA. Service level guarantees are hereby suspended until validation is reinstated. They didn't even dress it up. Just, "You're in breach. You don't have a leg to stand on. And no, we're not waiting for your PR team to approve a response." The board lit up. "Wait, so every transaction he approved is void? What's our exposure right now? We have vendors threatening to walk. What's legal's read on this?" It wasn't a conversation. It was a riot with suits. Legal counsel, bless her cold efficiency, stood slowly, adjusted her glasses, and dropped the hammer. "We've confirmed with Mavelix that the only valid officers listed for authorization are Lang, Miller, and Ortega. Of those, only Miss Lang is currently employed or reachable. All changes lacking her sign-off are unratified and in breach." Someone muttered, "Jesus Christ," like the name itself might reverse time. And then, as predictable as the sun rising after a power outage, Kurt tried to spin. "Let's hold on here. Let's not pretend Michelle Lang was compliant with internal protocols. She withheld institutional knowledge. She stonewalled the integration review. She refused to support modernization. That's a dereliction of duty, not authority." He looked around like he expected applause. Instead, Compliance Officer Dev Patel leaned forward, his voice razor-thin. "We have no record of noncompliance from Miss Lang. In fact, her original protocols were flagged internally for their clarity and audit readiness. The only deviation began when you bypassed her authority." Kurt blinked. "No, there were concerns. She was territorial." "She, you mean?" Dev interrupted. "She followed the contract?" Kurt faltered. "She made herself indispensable." "She was indispensable," legal fired back. "You didn't remove a barrier. You removed the dam." Someone near the window slammed their binder shut so hard it echoed. The chairwoman finally spoke, her voice like gravel and ice. "We now have a technical breach of contract, frozen client funds, and pending litigation risk, because you thought titles mattered more than signatures." Kurt tried again, a little softer. "I was doing what I thought was best for the company, and maybe, in some alternate universe where intent mattered more than law, that would have worked. But here, in this room, surrounded by people staring down millions in liability, intent doesn't mean shit. It was happening now, the unraveling. All the petty power moves, all the chest puffing, all the quiet erasures he made of Michelle's work, unspooling like a thread he never thought anyone would tug. Board members flipped to pages they'd never read before. Appendix B was suddenly gospel. Section 7B, their new bedtime story. One board member whispered, "How the hell did we let this happen?" Another muttered, "She warned us." Quietly, but she warned us. Decision had to be made, right now, before another client pulled the plug, before the SEC came sniffing, before the street caught wind that Valence Systems CFO had been authorizing millions in transactions with no legal power to do so. The air had shifted. It was no longer if Kurt would fall. It was how fast they'd make it look clean. And somewhere in her quiet house across town, Michelle Lang was probably folding laundry or sipping tea, unaware or very aware that her absence was screaming louder than Kurt ever could. They called the vote fast. No drawn-out performance. No committee to further review. Just a motion, a second, and a silence that tasted like burnt pride. Effective immediately, the chairwoman said, CFO Kurt Weller is placed on administrative leave pending internal investigation for unauthorized actions resulting in contract breach. No one applauded. That's not how power moves sound in rooms like this. They don't boom, they click, like the sound of a lock turning on the inside of a very expensive door. Kurt didn't speak. For the first time since the day he barged into my office and told me to clear my desk, he had no words, not a protest, not a plea. Just a flicker of disbelief in his eyes, like someone who stepped into a poker game without realizing he was the only one not holding a hand. Legal slid him a printed copy of the leave notification. Courtesy, really? HR would email the same thing by end of day. His laptop was already flagged for shutdown. IT had his access revocation queued in a tab labeled Weller Full Disable 09.12. Then came the part that made my phone buzz in my lap. We're reinstating Michelle Lang as head of Treasury Operations, the chairwoman said. Effective immediately. She will report directly to the board for the next 90 days while we review structural corrections and revalidate payment architecture. Not interim, not contractor. Reinstated. They could have offered it quietly, off the record, through a recruiter with a fake name and a 6-month clause. But no, they said it in the room, in front of the same faces that once looked past me like I was a placeholder between their coffee and their bonus. I wasn't in the room when it happened. One of the board assistants, who'd always admired my margin notes and called me Miss Binder with a wink, sent me a photo of the whiteboard summary. At the bottom, next to the words Treasury Chain of Command Temporary, was my name. Handwritten, bold, underlined. Later that afternoon, the processor's CEO joined the closing call. Michael Walsh looked at the screen like a man whose patience had been tested and who had won. He thanked the board for their corrective action, then said one final thing before signing off: some people are irreplaceable. Contracts know it, even when humans forget. The camera cut. The call ended, and Kurt, he walked out of the boardroom like a man moving underwater. His phone buzzed once, then again, but he didn't look at it. Maybe he already knew. Maybe HR had already booked the conference room where they tell people this isn't personal. Maybe he was wondering when the story he told himself about himself stopped being true. When I arrived at the office the next morning, reception didn't blink. No awkward stares, just a nod. I still had my old badge in my purse habit, maybe, but it lit green when I scanned it. Michelle Lang, Treasury Ops. The hallway looked the same, but everything had shifted. I passed Kurt's old office on my way to mine. The door was propped open. IT was inside, carefully coiling up his power cable, sliding the monitor into a foam-lined box. His nameplate sat on the corner of the desk like a relic from a canceled show. I didn't stop. I didn't smirk. I didn't say a word. I just walked. Because when the dust settles, the ones who scream the loudest never leave echoes. The ones who document, who sign, who hold the damn receipts, we don't need to shout. The paper always speaks last. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.